Imagine you are just pouring your morning coffee.
Right. Just a normal day.
Yeah, exactly. You walk into your kitchen, you step on the floorboards, you see the drywall, the ceiling.
Right.
There is this baseline expectation of solidity, right?
Oh, absolutely.
You trust that the foundation is made of concrete. You don't question the physics of the floorboards while you're just, trying to find your favorite mug. You just go about your day.
Exactly. I mean, we absolutely need that assumed physical stability just to function.
Right.
If you had to consciously calculate the structural integrity of every building you walked into, you'd be paralyzed.
Totally paralyzed. But then you encounter a piece of writing that just flips that entire premise on its head.
Yeah, it really does.
A text that forces you to realize the house we live in, like our society, our reality, isn't just made of wood and concrete. It is built out of the words we use.
The invisible structures.
Exactly. It's structured by historical records we never read. It's guarded by these entirely invisible rules about who gets to speak, what they're allowed to say, and who gets to even exist in public spaces.
Yeah.
And suddenly you look down and you realize you aren't just a resident in this house. You are part of the foundation.
It is the absolute definition of having your reality deconstructed. You start seeing the matrix, essentially.
Right. So welcome to the deep dive. Today we are taking you inside a truly expansive, fascinating manuscript titled Games and Nothing in 9 Styles.
It's quite a title.
It is. Now, to be upfront with you, this text is an intellectual maze. It pulls together heavy-hitting philosophical theorists, but it weaves them into literature and these incredibly vivid, almost like cinematic character vignettes.
Yeah, it's a text that demands a lot of the reader.
It really does.
I mean, it touches on philosophy, history, sociology, and biology, but it offers so much in return. It's ultimately this profound, unsettling, and strangely hopeful exploration of how those invisible structures shape our everyday reality.
And our mission today is to be your shortcut through that maze. We're going to extract the core insights about the words we speak, the institutions that govern us, and even the literal soil beneath our feet.
The whole picture.
The whole picture. We're going to make sure you get the absolute best nuggets of knowledge, the underlying why and how of these massive ideas without feeling buried by the density of the source material.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the very tool we are using to have this conversation, which is language.
A great place to start.
I always thought of language as just like a dictionary of definitions, but this text looks at language entirely differently. It says language is a game.
Right, and to help us grasp this, the text relies heavily on the philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein.
Okay.
He had this crucial late-career realization summarized in a really simple phrase. He said, meaning is use.
Meaning is use. How does that differ from the dictionary idea?
Well, we often think a word is just a passive label slapped onto an object in the real world. Like apple is just the sticker we put on the red fruit.
Right, it just points to the thing. Exactly. But Wittgenstein argued that meaning is actually about what the word does in a specific social practice.
Oh, I see.
Language is a game with rules, and whenever we interact, we are playing it. We are, making moves.
So the text illustrates this beautifully, almost tragically, using Samuel Beckett's play, Waiting for Godot.
Such a good example.
It really is. It focuses on these two characters, E and V, who are stuck in this barren landscape, waiting for someone who never arrives.
Just waiting.
Right. And at one point, the character E is obsessively examining a boot that doesn't fit. He takes it off, looks inside it, feels around, puts it back on, diagnoses the boot. Why?
Because the boot is a solvable problem.
Yes. Staring at the boot is a language game they can play to avoid the massive, terrifying, completely unanswerable question, which is, what are we doing with our lives, and is anyone coming to save us?
Yeah, it's what you could call a language game for managing philosophical confusion. Or, existential dread.
Definitely existential dread.
The boot gives them a structure. It gives them a set of concrete, logical moves to make so they don't just collapse into the silence of their actual situation. The game keeps the void at bay.
That makes so much sense. We do that all the time. But the text also takes this idea of language games and applies it to something deeply intimate.
Right. With Maggie Nelson.
Yes, it brings in Maggie Nelson's book, The Argonauts, where she grapples with the classic philosophical puzzle, The Ship of Theseus.
A classic.
For anyone who hasn't heard of it, the puzzle goes like this. If you have a wooden ship, and over time you replace every single wooden plank as it rots, is it still the same ship at the end?
A paradox that has haunted philosophers for centuries.
Truly. And Nelson applies this to her partner, Harry, whose body and identity are undergoing profound changes. The question becomes, how do you keep using the same words, the same language game of a relationship or a partner, when the actual people involved are fundamentally transforming?
It's a huge challenge.
To me, it feels like trying to update the operating system on your computer while the computer is still running. You are desperately trying to keep the core functionality going, like the love, the shared life, even as the base code of who you both are is actively being rewritten.
That's a great way to put it. What's fascinating here is that the text shows us language isn't just descriptive, it is the absolute limit of our world.
Wow, the absolute limit.
Yeah, Nelson can't just throw away the words family or relationship, because throwing away the words means throwing away the entire form of life that goes with them.
So what do you do?
You have to continually repair the ship while sailing in it. You have to stretch the language game to its absolute breaking point to accommodate the new reality without letting the ship sink.
That friction of trying to stretch the game really comes through in another vignette in the text, too. We meet a character named M who lives on the borderlands between English and Spanish.
Right.
And she never quite feels at home in either dictionary.
Yes, and this is where the text brings in a Nahuatl word popularized by the scholar Gloria Anzaldúa, which is Nepantla. It means the in-between space.
In Pantla.
Right. M lives in the constant friction of two linguistic worlds. When you live in Nepantla, you realize that translating a concept from Spanish to English isn't just swapping out a label.
It's not a one-to-one exchange.
Exactly. It's realizing that a feeling or a cultural joke completely evaporates in the new language. There's a gap. Anzaldúa describes this borderland as a wound that is also a mouth.
Oh, that is such a powerful image. A wound that is also a mouth, because it hurts to never fully fit into one clean linguistic box, but that exact wound gives you a voice.
Yeah, you see the blind spots.
Right, you can see the blind spots of both cultures because you're standing outside the game. But, this raises a huge conceptual pivot for me.
Where are we going?
Well, if language is a game we use to make sense of our world, a game with agreed-upon rules, what happens when we experience something so extreme, so horrific, that the rules just completely short-circuit?
That is exactly the threshold the text crosses next. We move from the everyday struggle of making meaning to the absolute catastrophic failure of language in the face of trauma.
It gets really heavy here.
It does. The text introduces a character, P, who lives with severe chronic physical pain. Drawing on the theorist Elaine Scarry, it points out a horrifying reality, which is that physical pain destroys language.
How so? Like you literally can't speak?
It's deeper than that. Scarry argues that pain shrinks your entire universe down to the immediate present of the body.
Oh, I see.
When you are in agony, you can't articulate the complexity of your interior world. You can only gesture at it with inadequate borrowed metaphors. You say it stabs or it burns, even though there is no knife and no fire.
That's chilling.
The pain itself has no voice. It is inherently world-destroying.
And the text takes that concept of individual physical silencing and scales it up to historical trauma. It looks at Primo Levi, a survivor of the Holocaust, and his lifelong struggle to testify to what happened in the camps.
Such a vital part of this manuscript.
Yeah. Levi wrote endlessly about the gray zone, this environment intentionally designed by the Nazis to destroy moral clarity and human solidarity. He kept trying to explain it, knowing full well that everyday language was fundamentally inadequate for the horror.
And this is where we see the ultimate stretching of the language game. In contrast to Levi's clear prose, the text looks at the poet Paul Celan.
Right, Celan.
Celan was Jewish, he survived, but his mother was murdered in the camps. Yet his native language, the only language he had to write his poetry, was German.
The language of the people who murdered his family.
Exactly.
Right.
So he wrote his famous poem, Todesfuge, or Death Fugue, in German. But he couldn't use normal German syntax.
He had to break it.
He had to take the language of the bureaucracy of the camps and violently twist it. He jams words together into harsh mechanical rhythms. He writes phrases like, "Black milk of daybreak, we drink it at evening."
It's so visceral.
It is. He forces the syntax into these suffocating, contradictory loops to make the language itself carry the impossible weight of the grief. He literally breaks the language on the page to show the brokenness of the world.
It's a staggering way of bearing witness when normal words fail.
Mhm.
But then, the text shifts gears to a completely different kind of silencing.
Mm.
It isn't about language failing.
Mm.
It's about language being used as a weapon of omission.
Ah, yes. The official historical archive
Right. We move from the unsayable to the intentionally unsaid.
of a very different kind of violence.
Exactly. The text looks at the historical records of enslaved people in the Americas. These archives are full of data. They have heights, weights, prices, shipping transactions.
That's legend.
But they intentionally omit the interior lives of the human beings. They record the machinery of the slave trade, but entirely erase the humanity of the people trapped inside it.
And this poses a massive problem for modern historians. The scholar Saidiya Hartman introduces this method called critical fabulation. Because the archive was designed by oppressors to exclude the voices of the enslaved, historians can't just rely on the existing paper trail.
Because if you do, you just repeat the silence.
Exactly. So Hartman argues for a careful, historically grounded use of imagination to reconstruct those interior lives, to fill in the deliberate gaps.
Which Toni Morrison does in her work.
Yes, the novelist Toni Morrison does this in Beloved, using narrative to bear witness for the millions lost to the Middle Passage.
So what does this all mean? If the official archive was built by oppressors, isn't fabulation just making things up? How can we trust it? I mean, where is the line between history and fiction?
It's a very fair challenge. But Hartman and Morrison are arguing that treating the oppressor's ledger as the objective truth is a fallacy.
Okay, that makes sense.
Sticking only to the oppressor's archive is a choice to let them dictate reality forever. Critical fabulation isn't fantasy. It's a scrupulous, historically constrained moral obligation.
It's a moral obligation.
Yeah. You take what is known about the conditions, the geography, the culture, and you insist, imaginatively but logically, that these individuals had full, complex humanity.
Right.
They had fears, loves, rivalries, griefs. The archive's silence is the actual lie. Fabulation is an attempt to correct that lie with a deeper truth.
Because the silence of the archive isn't an accident. It's an architecture of control. And that realization that structures of power dictate reality is the bridge to the next major section of the text.
The invisible walls.
Right. If archives control history, how do modern power structures control us right now in our daily lives?
It transitions into analyzing the invisible walls that surround us every day. And it starts with a deeply relatable vignette.
It really does.
Yeah.
Imagine you're sitting in your open plan office right now. The text gives us a character, F, who's doing just this.
We've all been there.
Oh, yeah. She is constantly checking her phone, but she makes sure her screen is angled away from her boss's sightline. She moderates her posture. She looks busy even when she isn't. Why?
Oh, the panopticon.
Yes. The text brings in Michel Foucault to explain this through the concept of the panopticon.
So for context, the panopticon was an architectural design for a prison. Picture a circular building with prisoner cells around the outer ring, brightly backlit.
Okay.
In the center is a watchtower with tinted windows. The guard inside can see everyone, but the prisoners can never tell if the guard is looking at them in any given moment.
And Foucault's brilliant insight was that modern power doesn't need to use physical force or public punishment anymore. It just builds a society that feels like the panopticon.
Exactly.
That creates docile bodies. Because we know we might be watched by our bosses, by our peers, by digital surveillance. We eagerly police ourselves.
Yeah.
You don't need a guard if the prisoner constantly monitors their own behavior.
The gaze of power becomes internalized. It's highly efficient.
Here's where it gets really interesting. If Foucault was writing about institutions, today it feels like we are living in a high-tech panopticon.
Oh, absolutely.
But instead of a human guard in a central watchtower holding a rifle, the warden is a highly personalized algorithm in our pocket. And instead of threatening us, the warden serves us our favorite streaming content to keep us totally complacent in our cells.
That is the perfect modern application of what thinkers like Theodore Adorno and Herbert Marcuse called the culture industry.
The culture industry.
Yeah. The text introduces character D to illustrate this. D prides himself on his very unique, critical, sophisticated taste in indie music. He thinks he's a rebel.
But he's not.
Not at all. The text reveals that his unique taste is actually ruthlessly curated by corporate algorithms designed to keep him scrolling, engaging, and consuming.
It's what the text calls pseudo-individuation. The system gives you 1,000 different streaming options, endless aesthetic choices, so you feel like this incredibly unique individual making free choices. But Marcuse called this repressive desublimation.
That's a dense term. Let's unpack it.
Yeah, the idea is that the system gives us the illusion of infinite lifestyle freedom precisely to exhaust our rebellious energy. It prevents us from demanding actual, structural, political change. We consume our way to a feeling of radical identity. We buy the right clothes, listen to the right indie bands. while the foundational power structures driving wealth inequality or environmental collapse remain completely untouched.
And those foundational power structures are exactly where the text goes next, moving from the psychological walls of the algorithm to the literal, concrete walls of the partial state.
Now, we need to pause here because we're moving into some heavily debated territory. The text draws on thinkers like Angela Davis, Ruth Wilson Gilmore, and others to critique capitalism, the prison system, and the state.
Right.
And just as a reminder for you listening, our job today isn't to take a side or endorse these specific political views.
Absolutely not.
We're remaining entirely impartial here. We are simply unpacking the arguments the author is presenting in the manuscript so you can understand the analytical frameworks they're using.
Exactly. Looking purely at the text's synthesis of these ideas, scholars like Davis and Gilmore view the modern prison system fundamentally differently than mainstream discourse.
How so?
They don't view it as a broken system trying to solve crime. They view it as a perfectly functioning system of organized abandonment.
Organized abandonment. What does that mean in practice?
Gilmore argues that as economies change, like deindustrialization gutting factory towns or public schools and healthcare being defunded, you end up with surplus populations.
People the economic system no longer has a use for.
Right. Prisons in this framework take that abandoned population and put them on surplus land in rural areas. It's a way for the state to manage the failures of the economic system through criminalization rather than social investment.
The text connects this mechanism to the philosopher Giorgio Agamben, specifically his concept of homo sacer.
Yes.
This is an old figure from Roman law, a person who is stripped of all legal rights. They exist outside the protection of the law, which means they can be killed without it legally counting as murder.
A really dark concept.
It is. Agamben argues that modern society operates on a state of exception, where governments constantly suspend normal rights in the name of security, making the homo sacer, the unprotected, disposable person, a permanent feature of modern life.
And the scholar Christina Sharp applies this framework specifically to the Black experience in the Americas. She uses this incredibly evocative metaphor of the weather.
The weather.
She argues that anti-Blackness isn't a series of isolated, exceptional events or individual prejudices. It is the weather. It is the total climate, the atmospheric condition in which society operates.
Wow.
It's an ongoing, total environment that persists long after the formal end of slavery. This raises an important question. If you follow the text's logic to this point, it paints a picture of an inescapable machine.
It really does.
If our inner desires are curated by algorithms and our history is silenced by archives, and the state of exception is everywhere, is there any way out?
It feels completely paralyzing, like you're trapped in a maze with no exit. But this is exactly where the text executes its most surprising pivot.
Thank goodness.
I know, right? It moves away from these massive, seemingly inescapable traps, and it finds a deeply grounded vision of resistance. And it literally starts in the dirt.
Yes, the text introduces our final character, H. She isn't staging a massive protest. She's just standing in her backyard with her hands buried in a compost pile.
Just in the dirt.
Yeah. She's smelling geosmin, which is the chemical compound that gives soil that rich, earthy smell after a rainstorm.
And the text uses this moment to bring in the philosopher Donna Haraway. Haraway says that to survive the machine, we have to fundamentally reject what she calls the arborescent view of the self.
The tree view.
Right. Think of a tree in an open field. A single trunk, isolated, standing totally alone. That is the myth of the rugged individual, completely separate from their environment.
Haraway says we need to discard the tree and embrace the rhizome.
The rhizome.
Think of a sprawling underground network of mushroom roots. Everything is interconnected. The text uses the term symbiosis, which translates to making together.
Making together.
Biologically, we are not separate individuals. We are holobionts. We are walking assemblages of human cells, billions of gut bacteria, and the environments we constantly interact with.
We are whole ecosystems.
Exactly. Haraway argues we need to make kin with the more than human world. We need to realize we are part of the compost, interconnected with the earthworms.
Okay, wait. So to fight against a massive algorithm-driven societal machine, the solution is realizing we are compost and making friends with earthworms. That sounds a little too small. It sounds like giving up, moving to a cabin, and just working in a garden while the world burns.
It sounds small on the surface, but if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's actually the most radical shift possible.
How so?
Think about it. The illusion of the rugged, isolated individual is the exact philosophical foundation that the culture industry and extractive capitalism rely on to function.
Oh, I see.
They need you to feel separate so they can sell you pseudo-individuation. They need you to view nature as a separate resource so it can be extracted. By recognizing our absolute messy entanglement with the world, we dismantle the foundational logic of the machine.
That's fascinating.
We stop treating the world and other people as disposable. It's about what Haraway calls staying with the trouble.
And the text pairs this biological reality with Ernst Bloch's philosophy of hope. Bloch makes a crucial distinction between abstract utopia and concrete utopia. Abstract utopia is just escapist fantasy. It's wishing for a magical future where everything is suddenly perfect.
Which is paralyzing in its own way because it's impossible.
Right. But concrete utopia is the imperfect, fragile, messy, alternative way of living that is being built right now in the dirt. It's the not yet that is actively present in the present.
The not yet.
Yeah. When character H learns to garden from her neighbor or participates in a local mutual aid network giving away food, she isn't overthrowing global capitalism by Tuesday. But she is practicing an alternative logic.
She's living the alternative.
Exactly. She is proving in real time that relationships based on care and sustainability, rather than extraction and policing, are actually possible.
The text highlights this kind of grounded hope through science fiction, actually. It points to Ursula K. Le Guin's novel The Dispossessed, which revolves around a profound realization. The walls are made and can be unmade.
I love that quote.
If human decisions built the panopticon, human decisions can dismantle it plank by plank. It also brings in Octavia Butler's Parable of the Sower, which is built on the central axiom that God is change.
God is change.
If you accept that the reality you live in is not static, that change is the only actual constant in the universe, you realize you have the agency to help shape the direction of that change.
So to bring this all back together for you listening right now, we have gone on a massive journey today.
We really have.
We started by navigating the slippery games of language, trying to keep the ship afloat while we replaced the planks. We witnessed the horrifying failure of words in the face of trauma and the moral necessity of fabulating the truths that the official archives tried to silence.
The invisible walls.
Yes, we stared down the invisible algorithmic wardens in our pockets and the very real concrete walls of the carceral state. And ultimately, we arrived at the compost pile.
Back to the dirt.
Back to the dirt. We realized that to survive this intricate machine, we have to reject the illusion of isolation. We have to accept that we are constantly changing, deeply interconnected holobionets making kin with the world around us.
It fundamentally rewires how you view your place in the structure. You aren't just trapped in the house. You are part of the foundation, which means you can shift.
It really does. So I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today. Look around your immediate physical environment right now, your office, your living room, the street outside your window.
Just take it in.
What is one wall in your daily routine like? An unspoken rule, an expectation, a boundary that feels like an absolute natural law of the universe, but was actually built by human decisions.
And if it was made by someone.
Exactly. If it was made by someone, what small, concrete action would it take to start unmaking it?
It's a powerful question to carry into your day.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.